Life is full of obstacles, tragedies, and rancidity. Some of us experience these on a monstrous level. Meet my grandmother, Dr. Saundra Rhode. She was caught in a web of frequent struggles, a web of unspeakable hardships that seemed impossible to escape from. Here's her story of her flooding desires to achieve not only escaping that web, but much more.
The only thing I could think of when I would think about those years were me hammering a nail in some guy's eye on the floor for hurting me. And for years I lived with that. I have 8 brothers and sisters. I'm next to the oldest. My oldest brother went into the military, and we have not been able to locate him ever since that. He was there at 19. We grew up in a very poor home. My mother, I suppose, did the best she could. Again, I couldn't remember sometimes because of the abuse physically and also sexual abuse. But majority of the time it was sexual abuse. We lived in what we would consider Southeast Washington, D.C., in a home where all of us pretty much stayed. I always lived in the same roof with my 2 sisters. Our times of moving around was pretty much a lot. Can I remember the times and the addresses? No, because throughout those times I was being abused by either my mom's boyfriend, boyfriends, or someone else. I can't remember the someone else, but I can remember the boyfriends. I remember being abused by someone. I'm not even sure if it was a older brother. I don't know if it was a cousin. It might have been. I kind of think it might have been a cousin. And the reason I talk so much about the abuse is because this is the very thing that I had to fight over for years of my life. We moved on what we called 151 Randolph Place Northwest. That's the one address I remember. And I remember my mother's boyfriend. I was, how old? 13. I think I was 13 at that time, still the abuse. And at that time, they had what they called youth jobs where you could go sometime, as long as you was with an adult and they would pay you. Well, I couldn't get that particular paper to do that. So I would go to work with my mother's boyfriend, which she said was our stepfather, which wasn't our stepfather because she never married him. But I would go to work with him at night. And it was a thing of cleaning the buildings. And they would pay me after it was all over with. Well, that's when the real abuse started, because he would take me there and he would do everything he wanted to do. I couldn't say anything. My mom, when I did finally had enough nerve to tell my mom, she said it was my fault. She didn't leave him. We stayed in the house, but I was scared to death of him. I remember times at night I used to literally wet the bed because I was so afraid to get up at night to go to the bathroom thinking he was going to be there. And that lasted for years until I was able to graduate from high school. And the first thing I wanted to do was get away. So I did pretty good in high school. After we left Randolph Place, the place I was telling you about I graduated from, we moved to Northeast Washington, D.C., in a big house, really nice. I can remember my mother's boyfriend, the same guy that raped me, was there too. When we got there, of course, we had rooms down the hall from each other where he was down one end, I was down the other. And I was, again, afraid to get up at night to go to the bathroom for fear that I would see him. My mother really, really believed that it was all about me. And one day, when I was trying to tell her what was going on, my mom took a black granite frying pan and she hit me with it because she said that I was lying, that it wasn't him. Now, mind you, this has been going on for years. But prior to those years, again, all I saw was this other guy when I was very small. So there's like 5 or 6 years out of my life I cannot remember because of the abuse when I was tiny. When I came out of that, this right here, this abuse was ongoing. I felt that my brothers and sisters were becoming distant to me, and that's when the division started. And I went from my home to literally to Oklahoma. I wanted to get as far away from home as I possibly could. So I went to Oklahoma school. It was Southwestern State in Weatherford, Oklahoma. Stayed there from 1967 to the fall of 1969, I think it was. It's about maybe a year and a half. It was really a mess. I did pretty good in the school, but I was very mean. So I met this guy there, got pregnant when I was there. So when I got pregnant, I came home. I didn't have the baby in Oklahoma. I came home to have the baby. And the guy came to DC to see me, but my mom wouldn't let me see him. So, of course, he thought it wasn't his. So he left. She would not let me see him. One, I was staying in her house. She's not going to let me, at that time in my generation, you had to do what your parents say to do. So I only remember one thing about going to school, and that is fighting. I used to fight the guys because if they said anything to me, I'd fight back. But in terms of kids who have elementary school life and the playground, and I don't know any of that. That's another chunk of my life that was off and on. College was pretty clear. I kind of knew all of that when I came back home. But the period between her taking Ken and me meeting Rhode was another dark space. She thought I was this person. And so the fact that I told her that her boyfriend was abusing me, of course, I'm out. Get out. So she put me out. And I went to stay with this aunt. Well, that track record followed me. So when I got to my aunt, even though nothing happened, she assumed this, and I think it was the reactions of her husband that she put on me and said, oh, I was being flirtatious, I was doing this. She hit me in the head with the claw part of a hammer, which I have a scar in my forehead. That's why I keep it covered a lot. And put me out, left me in New Jersey to die. I fell in the street in East Orange, New Jersey. I remember that. And someone picked me up, took me to the hospital. They stitched me up. But again, I didn't have anywhere to go because my aunt then called my mom to say, what you said about her is true. I put her out. I don't know where she is, but I was in the hospital. So I would go to the parks, sleep in the park, go to the Safeway or something, steal food. Sometimes I would find a sandwich, believe it or not, in a trash can or something to survive. I did that for about a week. Went to the Red Cross, and they let me stay there. They can't let you stay there for a long time, so they let me stay there for a little while. Got out because I had to leave. I had to leave there. My mom said I could come home, but really wasn't true. So I was in the street again. So these guys picked me up when they saw me in the street, and they said they would help me get home, back to DC. They were real nice and all of that, but the whole thing behind that is, we'll get you back, but you're going to do what we want you to do first. They did. They raped me. They did all they wanted to do. Bought me a ticket, got on the train in New Jersey and come home. And that's where my mom literally would not accept the fact that, of course, the stitches I had, she said that that's the reason that happened is because of who I was. But I wasn't that person. But I couldn't make her or anyone believe I wasn't that person. So I had to live with this idea that I was trashy. These are the words. Just everything you could think of. Girl. So I decided, and I think that's when I decided, I'm going to do whatever they said that I am. Now, did I go out here and deal with every guy? No. What I did do was I wanted to fight everybody. I was very, very mean. I was hateful. So I was going from place to place with my child. I was not going to leave him with anyone. I wasn't going to, because first she wanted me to have an abortion. I wasn't going to do that. So it was me and my son. We went from place to place.
My mom is the love of my life. I'm 54 years old, and we were up until this point, our life and relationship has been a story. Growing up, it's kind of hard. My relationship with my mom was hard, difficult, based on the things that she had to endure in the sense of her childhood, and being able to try to balance that and raise me was kind of difficult.
You know, I was working still with the law firm. I was a legal secretary. I had built myself up to that. And we would go from place to place and just live in a room here and a room there and all of that. And just, that's how I lived for a while. And then I met Rhode.
I met Saundra, I think, around 1970. I had just got back from Vietnam, and she had just pretty much moved into the neighborhood. We was playing sports, and she showed up, and we started talking, and after that, I think things kind of went well with Saundra and I, and we just basically got along.
We dated. He did all he could. And then I moved with him. But in between the times, all those little friction areas, I can't dictate what it all was about. I just knew I was really an angry girl. So now I'm out of college. I'm out of my mother's home. I'm living on Southern Avenue with Rhode, who, by the way, was amazing. We lived together for a while, and I had a baby by him. It was Tanisha.
What can I say about my mom? She's a warrior, trailblazer, overcomer, super passionate.
Tanisha was 1.5 when we got married. Tanisha and Ken are 4 years apart, so Ken must have been like 5, maybe. May have the math wrong. But we got married. In the marriage, it was rough. Not because of Rhode. He did everything he possibly could to make me feel like a lady and all of that. The problem with that is I was so angry. There was nothing he could do to satisfy my life at that time. I thought it would be, but it didn't, because I was so angry at everybody. I went through that period for a long time, and you wouldn't believe how mean I was. Some people say when young people kill or fight or do all these things in the street, like now, I totally understand where they are. Because there was times in my life where I really wanted to hurt people. And so when I hear about, and that's one reason why I work with a lot of young people, I want people to understand this. They're not bad, it's a background involved.
She always hated for people to say, oh, children are bad. No, they're not bad. She's just always a defender of that. And, they just don't understand who they are yet, And once somebody helped them understand who they are, they'll be okay. And so she always would instill that positive force into young people. She believed in them. She still does to this day. At 75 years old, she goes hard for young people.
I know I went through it. And if it wasn't only by the grace of God, I probably would be in jail as well. I probably would have killed somebody as well because I was that angry. Where I would have, all you had to do was give me one reason and I would have snapped probably. But again, it's only by the grace of God that that didn't happen.
My mom had a, specific call on her life, as all of us do. But as a kid, I didn't understand that. You know, our life and our household wasn't normal in the sense that because of her love for children and her love for people, she always extended herself in helping others, and that's because of the things that she had went through.
As I got older, I started learning more about her story, which helped me understand her more. As a child, I really didn't always understand her. But as I became, as I grew into adulthood and started learning and understanding more of her story, it all started coming together. As a child, she was very misused, mishandled.
I remember when my son was 9 and I did have my own place. I was living in Palmer Park. I had a house. I bought a house from being a legal secretary. We lived there. And then Rhode was with me at that time. And my mom and those hated me so bad. They tried their best all this time to get my son. They reported me to the social services department, who would watch my house and watch Ken going back and forth for a long time. That didn't work. I don't know what they did, what they told him. Like he would go there sometimes on the weekend. This particular day, Ken went out of the window of my house at night and he walked from my house all the way uptown. Now this is Maryland and he's walking from Maryland all the way up to DC. How he got there, I have no idea. But my sister told me when he got there, he collapsed. And my mother, when she got him there, he never came back home for a while. Why? She filed in the court that I was dead. Of course, I wasn't dead. The papers were written up. I don't know who did it, how they did it. I didn't know it, but I couldn't figure out why he didn't want to come home. I think she may have told him I was dead or whatever, but she got him in school under their name, under that address. And for some reason, deep down inside, I felt something was wrong. Well, at that point, I had to fight. Now, well, hey, I'm not dead, so I'm going to fight. And we went to court, and I got him back. But at that time in the court, I remember him saying he didn't know who I was or something. And it wasn't a long time in between the time that I didn't see him. He then was very angry. I don't know what they told him, but he was very angry. Part of why I believe he was angry was because of me. Because, of course, when I was carrying him, I was just as angry, or maybe even worse. That period right there, I had to fight CPS. Again, they watched my house. The judge finally gave me custody back, and I still was not angry at my mom. I still wanted her to accept me. So whatever she did was okay with me as long as she accepted me one day as who I was. Now that didn't happen. So I got him. He was acting up in school, same thing I did, acting up in school. I knew the pattern because it was the same pattern I had. Although I didn't do that to him, my mom did, but I also knew that a lot of the reason he was acting the way he was acting was because of what I had done, how I was acting, when I was carrying him, all the feelings I went through, all the anger, all the hurt, all of that. And I just feel like that was a transfer. And so there he was doing the same thing, just being mean, angry, not because I spoke that over his life or anything like that, but because he was born out of me being angry and upset all the time and low self-esteem and all of the above.
Growing up, it was rough for me mentally because I hid a lot of things within inside of myself. And so therefore I grew up alone in my mind, which led me to a lot of other things.
And then he got into some other areas where he was pretty much doing, doing not so good stuff, and yet I fought for him in terms of, prayer. That's all I could do. Because one day I found out that the only person that really would love me would be God. I was looking out the window of me coming home on the bus one day from work. And again, I had my own house and all of that. And I saw myself talking to God. And I would say to him, if you give me an opportunity to get out of the way I feel and how that I am, I promise you, I would talk to every young person that I come in contact with. And if they have any issues, I'm going to be there to help them. But you got to promise me that you got to let me live my life not the way that I was brought up. And I had that conversation with God outside the window of the bus.
I'm sitting here today because I tell you the things I walked into and chose the directions I chose to go into out of rebellious, I shouldn't be here. And I know that with a fact, with everything in my heart and everything in my mind. I know if it wasn't for my mom, not what she did, what she said to me, but because her relationship with God, and she looked out for the other kids. So guess what? She prayed. She put God on notice for me. Hey, I'm looking out for all these other kids. Even though he's acting up, I need you to help him and save him.
That was the beginning of the day that I began to work with young people. First starting with my own children, and which I would have done now for 43 years. So that was my day of change, that day out of the window. And when I came back to myself, I was at the stop that I needed to get off, and I ran home. And I got in the window, when I got in the door, I told Rhode, I saw God outside of the window. He probably was freaking out, thinking something was wrong, and he didn't quite get it. So when I realized he didn't quite get it, I kind of like, okay, I got it. You're not there yet. And so I didn't tell anyone. But inside of me, I was so happy that I had met someone I believe, because when I was talking to him, he said, I love you. When that word, I love you, hit my heart, I knew I owed him something, because no one ever told me they loved me, not even my mother. So when he told me that, all of a sudden I felt obligated. I owed him something. And the obligation was, if I ever meet someone, another child, that feels, or I can believe feels the way that I did or went through all of this, I'm going to help them. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I didn't know what to say, but that's all I could say. I got in church, and that's exactly what I began to do. The first thing I had was a pageant, Miss Sweetheart Scholarship pageant. And in that pageant, I had 20 young girls and maybe like 10 guys who were escorts. And during that pageant time was when I really realized that, wow, this isn't just something I promised God. This became my passion. So every pain I went through became my passion. And then I started having camps. When we're in camp, we're teaching them self-esteem. We're building them up. We're talking to the families about them. We're making them feel special. We're letting them know that this is a safe space where they can talk, where they can let everything that they feel out. And it was almost as if they were all my children. And I wanted to give them what I thought was love, but really couldn't identify it. But what I kind of thought was, and that was a hug, that was an understanding, that was a safe space to say whatever you wanted to say to me. But to really say it was love, to identify it, I don't know. That was my way of what I thought love was like. Camp to me was to take them out of the area they were in and take them away. Well, why did I do that? Because as long as I was living in that area where everybody was doing the same thing, where it appeared to be no hope because everybody was talking the same language, the parents seemed to not understand or hear, or it was just a toxic situation where I was. And my dream was if I take them out of the area, I could get control over their mindset, which is why I took them away. And so every camp that I had, it was away. It was out of DC. It was in Maryland somewhere that was 2 hours away, or Virginia or North Carolina. But to take them out of their present surroundings so that I could help them understand.
And when we went to camp, she would change the very lives of young people. I mean, they had no idea where they was going, what they was doing, and she would bring the very best out of them. And that's who Saundra Rhode is. She's a motivator. She experienced a lot of trauma, and she did not want people to go through the trauma she went through. So she would help them. She dealt with injustice all her life, and she did not want kids to go through that.
I appreciate Tiara. I think she's a strong person and going to be a bona fide leader. I noticed a almost complete change in some of you, especially with your attitude. But you got to help me do this because I'm not a guy that just busts your door down. I'm intelligent. How can I go? Hands on your feet. Let's do it together there. Our subject of the issue today is restoring your self-worth.
So we would go away for about a week or so. It started off as a weekend, and then it, morphed into a whole week. And we would go away and just learn about ourselves, figure out, what makes us tick, why do we do the things that we do, how we could become better individuals. It was amazing. I've watched, I don't know, over 20 years of young people lives being changed. To this day, they'll come back and just say that was never the same after their encounter at Hallelujah Week. I was never the same. Once I was a camper, and then I ended up instructing as well, and it was just so rewarding to watch so many young people over the years impacted by her.
And they came back, and they was like, they felt like Superman. They felt like they could do some things. And I believe I've seen many of those young people go from just can't do absolutely nothing to I can take on the world now. And I watched the parents' eyes light up because, is that my kid? Did my kid just do that? Did my kid just say that?
Sometimes you don't know what to do when you're taken out of that space. And so you can't really hear anything but what you're used to. Well, that's all I heard. And mind you, yes, I did experience drugs. I would go to work sometime high. Sometime I wouldn't be able to go because I experienced all of that. I actually went to jail for stealing out of a department store. Did I need to do it? No. But I just wanted to. I wanted to do anything that would make my mom feel bad. So I did that. I stayed in Women's Detention Center for a weekend. Went to court the next day. They let me out. I didn't have a record, so they let me out. I was afraid to accept love. I don't even know what that felt like. I don't even know what it was. So if you tried to hug me or tell me all of that, I would reject all of that. I don't even know what that felt like. I didn't even know what the word love meant because that didn't happen to me.
I grew up in a house where we didn't say I love you. We didn't do hugs and all of that. That just wasn't what we did. Although, did I know my parents loved me? Absolutely. I didn't feel absent of that, But far as the physical words being said and the physical touch in that way, that didn't happen. In her growing up and being absent of, you know, the love, being absent of hugs and that physical touch, healthy, in a healthy way, she was very resilient in ensuring that my brother and myself, did not repeat that same struggle that she had to go through.
My life was full of turmoil. My life was full of negative stuff. My life was full of, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're not smart as your sister, you're this, just everything. But never bonded with anything or anyone that literally told me they loved me, except that experience I had outside that bus. And then finally, the brother that really did like me, I would say, was killed not too far from where we lived. He was the only brother that really began to understand that my mom wasn't telling the truth. So here again, okay, now I'm angry at God. This is before I really saw. I'm just angry now. Everybody saying, okay, this is the one person that even trying to believe who I really am, and now he's gone. So why would you take him? So now I'm angry all over again. I've never met my father. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he looks like. I don't know anything about him because my mom would never tell me. So I don't know. I don't know what it's like to have a dad. There's a little thing that I see kids do. They take rubber bands and they make a ball out of it. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Well, to me, that's like a rubber band web. And that web was me. And every rubber band that they put on there to make this ball, it was getting bigger because it just seems like when you pop one of those or you pull them, it just popped right back. Nothing was ever loose. So this little rubber band ball is what I used to see in my life all the time. I used to say I'm in a web. And that web looked like that. And no matter which way I would try to undo this rubber band, it would pop right back. So I wasn't able to get out of that web. During that period, I began to feel better about myself. And this is when I was told again, oh, you need to go ahead and finish your degree. So I went to University of Maryland, College Park, got a bachelor's in psychology. And while I was there, one of the instructors said, one day you're going to be a doctor of psychology. And I was like, you have lost your mind. It's no way. I kept hearing her in my head. And I said, I'm going to go and get my master's. So I went to get my master's at University of the Rockies. I had moved at that point to the honor roll, was inducted in the Golden Key International Honor Society. This is freaking me out now because, look at this girl. I'm going to be crazy enough to go to this PhD program. And I moved right out of my master's program directly into my doctoral program. Again, International Golden Key International Honor Roll Society. Graduated.
To go back to that PhD program, my wife would stay up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m. sometimes. It was a very difficult program to pass. 18 students started out. They ended up with 3 that only made it, and she was one of the 3. She wanted to give up many times, but she said, no, they got people that's waiting on me, that's depending on me.
I do live through the promise that I made God. And that is, forever I will see about young people. Well, what do I mean by seeing about them? I will walk with them as far as they allow me to walk until they get out of whatever situations they're in. That's a promise in my heart. And so from that, I build Raise the Curtain. God would allow me to take 17 young people to the Philippines to understand what it was like to be in a foreign country and to understand the difference of being here although I could not tell them my background, I figured, but I can show you, and I'm going to take you to the Philippines. And we did medical missions there. What I'm feeling, I can show you. So when we were in the Philippines, we saw how people live. And, it taught them a lot. We were there for about 12, 14 days. We came back. It was a change in their life. They had never, ever been out of the country. And so one of the things that kept coming to me that I believe that God would tell me is give them every experience that you can give them to build their self-esteem. The next 2 years, I would take them to Africa. There, I showed them how they were living there in Ghana. After that, I built another program called Gate 12. Well, what was Gate 12? Gate 12 is an organization that's spun out of Raise the Curtain. Raise the Curtain was a program that tried to help the young people, but also it was the camp, and also it was, hey, we don't just want to take the children to camp. I want to get inside that home now to let the mother know, hey, we're bringing your child back. He's changed, but now I need you to be able to know how to accept that. All those kids that we took to camp, which went from anywhere to 50 to 80 kids, we made sure that they moved in school from a DF student to a CB student here in Next Gen, where I would build an organization through therapy, through mental health, through literally walking out what young people wanted along with their family. Like it wasn't going to look like church anymore, like we see it now.
We would find that these kids, some of them didn't even have money. She would take her own money and spend on these kids because when one had ice cream, all of them had ice cream. And that's the way she carried, and that's the way she did. Amen. All her life, she made sure those kids never felt different.
My greatest thing is that I never had to look past my doorstep for a greater example of a mom, a lady, a leader.
Everything that people say I would never be, every negative thing that happened in my life, somehow God would do a positive.
She is unstoppable. She's resilient. They build walls in front of her. She's going to find a way to get over, around, or penetrate through. That's who she is, I'm telling you. Nothing will stop Saundra Rhode. She helps people.
And God gave me the opportunity just recently to go to India for 5 weeks to open up that avenue through the United Nations to teach young girls about leadership. So I was there for 5 weeks. And from there, I went to Mexico. And from there, they wanted me to go to Uganda and to Kenya to teach young people how to have or become leaders, real leaders, through the NGOs at the United Nations in New York.
She have never, ever put herself on display and put herself in front. She would always work from the rear, in the background. Never wanted any credit for nothing.
I'm not a person that needs to be recognized. I'm not a person that needs, well, first of all, let's say it like this, I'm real. I'm going to say how I feel.
She's multifaceted. What you see on the what you see and what you think off when you first meet her, you'll never really understand her. A lot of times, if you're not strong, if you're not confident in your own self, you'll find yourself jealous, or I wouldn't say the word jealous, don't like her because she's real. So if you got any gain or any game, anything that you think that you're going to get over, or I like the word game, you're running some kind of game, she's not the one to be around because she's going to figure it out right away. She's going to understand what you're doing and what's going on. But If you down and out, my man, if you really trying to change, if you in the gutter and you got nobody else to turn to outside of God, trust you me, that's the woman you want on your team.
I'm going to be real with everybody. But most important about it, me, is the young people. That overpowering feeling of wanting them to survive in this generation and how to survive.
I've watched her my entire life see about other people, which in turn caused me to do the same. I've never grown up in a house where it was just me, my mom, and my dad and my brother. We've always had to move over, Tanisha. We have a little Kim coming over today. We're taking care of other families my entire life. Never lived in a house for any extended period of time with just us.
Growing up, it was always someone else's in our home. She always was bringing someone in to live. Always someone sleeping in my bed, always sharing a room. So growing up through my life, it was always a family, not just one person, but many families.
Sometimes our kids had to go through a little suffering because we wouldn't invite people to live with us because they didn't have a place to go. And I remember Ken and them said, why do people always have to live with us? Because she was dealing with injustice. She didn't want people to suffer like she suffered. And she would find a way to take care of those people.
Pastors would always make it seem like everything is good. We're this and we're that, and all you have to do is just pray and everything. No, no, no. Tell them the truth. This generation right here have my heart more than the other ones before camp because they don't have the truth. We're afraid to tell the truth. Rather than tell them the truth and help them, we're engaging with them. We're doing whatever they do. And there are times when I dream at night about locations I've been, situations I've been in. There's no identification. Just like I can't figure out who this guy is. I see that all the time. I'm with this nail, and the nail is about that tall. And I have a hammer, and I'm driving this hammer through this man's eye because he's hurt me. And I see that a lot, but I don't know who it is. And that right there haunts me every day. And I have to live through that and live through the ones I really do know about. And let me tell you something. Only God is making me survive. And people don't understand that. And the very person that my mother saw last was me. You know what she said to me before she died? I was the last person that saw her. She said, "You're neither steel nor iron. Even it can bend." And I could never understand that. But I was the last person that saw her before her death. And I was able to say to her, "I'm sorry. And I forgive you for everything that happened in my life."
She would never give up. I've seen people that really knifed my wife in the back, and she said, I'm done with them. And then when something happened to them, she's the first one there.
Beauty in her is she can be hard, but at the same time, as hard as she can be just as soft. So it made her both.
She was hard. You know why she was hard? Because even when you go to the military, when they was hard on us, they tried to discipline us. And they try to bring out the very best in you. The fact that she was hard, a lot of times people would run away from you or just, I don't want nothing to do with it. But she had something else going on. She would love them. She was hard, but she was fair. and she would love them, and they knew that she loved them.
She can be stern and, get you motivated and get you from A to B, but at the same time, she can love you up. And coming from her background, that's not an easy feat, for someone to be able to have that sort of dynamic, to be able to be both.
So she took all this pain in her life and she challenged it and said, I will not be stopped, because everyone expected her to fail. They plotted against her to make sure she failed, and she fought tooth and nail.
About 4 years ago, I created this, well, I believe God gave me this program called Sister to Sister. And it's a program about women. And in that Sister to Sister program, again, trying to help women to understand what it is to be in a position where you're hurting and all, but yet you can still move, like you can still go forward. The third year, which was in November of 2023, my sister decided to come. Prior to that, she wanted to get a relationship with me after not having no relationship with me for 40 years. And my sister was sitting in the back of the room on the left-hand side. And we had asked them to write down any issues that they were having so that we could address them before we left. And on one of the cards it said, what do I do if I want to get a relationship with my sister? Totally not believing it's my sister that wrote that note. And my answer was, all you have to do is go to your sister and you all talk about it and get a relationship. It's just that simple. I'm real adamant about it. And about 15 minutes later, my sister raised her hand and got up. She came over. She said, I read my sister's bio. I sat here, and as much as I wanted to believe that she was this all these years, I read her bio, and I've seen how far she has come. And today, in front of everybody, after 40 years, I want to tell my sister I'm sorry. And she got up and she said that to me in front of everybody.
It's not the timing, it's the sincerity of the act, something a lot of people may never get a chance to do. I love her so much.
She's very wise. She had great common sense. And because of that, people would try to reduce her and try to make her, smaller than what she was, but she would never give in. She would fight back and fight back all the time. She would fight. And I love that about her. She had no giving up in her. She would never give up.
I'm so proud of her. I can't even express how proud I am to be part of her legacy. Just her presence, just her invokes something in you to want to do better, to want to be better, to want more, to strive for more, to push for more. You can't be in her presence and settle.
In saying all that I've said today, do I think that people are able to recover or become resilient? Yes, I do. Do I think people have that ability? Yeah, I do, but they have to have help. But I still have this one hope that stays remain live in my light, in my heart, is that these young people in this generation, they're going to provoke positive change. Because I strongly believe they have a unique job to do as change agents in these last days. but I feel it deep down inside. So I don't call them bad. They're stable in a situation for right now, but there's going to come a day where that's going to change. And I totally believe that.
My grandmother influenced me greatly. I began to see her strengths in me, and it changed how I respond to life. Attackers tried to knock her down, and me too. I learned how to react to distress from my grandmother. She is the definition of consummate inspiration.
If there's a standard to be set, why don't we set the standard?
So it's up to us whether or not we want to forgive. And forgiveness is based on choice.
Because we don't care who you are, where you come from, but what's important is where you're going.